What's up guys, Houndish here, and today I wanted to talk about a few exotics that should totally be on your radar in Destiny 2, some particularly powerful exotics, and some which I feel like are going to be really good inside of the Leviathan raid, or are at least a very good starting point, considering we don't really know what's going to be in the raid. But there are some exotics which are really powerful in Destiny 2, and I want to talk about them in this video. So firstly, I wanted to look at the Orpheus Rig exotic boots for the Hunter. Thanks to my friend PTT for sending me the footage of these things. They are absolutely insane. I will link his channel down below. But we have the bonuses right here. So we have Uncanny Arrows, provides ability energy for each enemy tethered by Shadow Shot anchors. So as you can see right here, he fires the tether out and it grabs onto a bunch of enemies, and the tether almost immediately recharges right there. It is based on how many enemies you actually kind of latch with the tether, but obviously this is incredibly powerful, and as you can imagine, you get a couple of those hunters inside of some of the raid engagements, you're going to be generating a bunch of orbs, as well as having, some pretty decent crowd control there with the tethers. And obviously it's very much the same thing if you want to use this in strikes or any other activity, public events. It's an incredibly powerful exotic. I'm convinced that it's going to be toned back a little bit because this seems really strong, but if you're a hunter, Night Stalker especially, going into the Leviathan raid, this is one that you should definitely pick up. The next exotic I wanted to talk about is the Merciless fusion rifle right here, and this is one that's become pretty popular pretty quick because of its insane damage output. So the bonuses are conserve momentum, non-lethal hits with projectiles make this weapon charge faster until its wielder gets a kill. It also has impetus, reloading immediately after a kill increases weapon damage for a short time. So as you actually fire this thing at a target, if you don't make a kill on that target, it will decrease the charge time for the fusion rifle until you actually make a kill. So you can see right here, you get the first shot and then the second shot, and it slowly kind of powers up and fires faster, and you can see that it's outputting a bunch of damage right here. And on top of this, reloading the magazine will grant a damage bonus. So if you've got a bunch of power ammo kind of stacked up, once you go over that magazine of 8, you're going to get a damage bonus as well. And this thing is just really good, particularly for super tanky mages and things like that, but it can also be used for boss damage pretty effectively. Of course, in the raid specifically, we don't know what the encounters will be like, but this is going to be really good for, kind of upper mid-tier enemies that are yellow bars that you're fairly close to. And if we do end up in engagements where we can get close to bosses, this is going to be a really good exotic. And this will be a really good one as well for kind of popping a tether and using an empowering rift. You'll get an absolute bunch of damage with this thing. The other key player in the power weapon slot is of course the Warcliff Coil, or the Dubious Volley. This has Mad Scientist, the weapon fires a volley of rockets, and it also has Mechanized Autoloader. The weapon automatically reloads on ammo pickup, so if you're just running through a bunch of ammo and the magazine's empty, it will auto-load, which is really nice. And where the Merciless is really good at kind of dealing with a single target that's really tanky, the Warcliff Coil, while also good at dealing with single targets, is very good for some crowd control in kind of close spaces. It takes down shielded red bars so easily, and it'll also do a bunch of damage and get kills on nearby enemies, if they're grouped up. It will also one-shot a bunch of yellow bar enemies as well, and even if it doesn't one-shot them, it's going to take the shield off, do a bunch of damage, and really stagger them. And like I said, Merciless is much better for dealing with a single target, where Warcliff Coil is absolutely brutal at kind of groups of enemies and things with shields. Although Warcliff Coil is a much more hazardous weapon to actually use, it can be fairly easy to kill yourself with this thing because you've got to be relatively close to a target as well, because those volleys kind of do spread out over a distance and there is a lot of recoil on the weapon as it fires. But between Merciless and Warcliff Coil, right now, you're going to struggle to find anything that can pack more of a punch, and both of these exotics have a ton of potential in the raid. Another exotic which has a lot of potential for the raid would be the Skyburner's Oath exotic scout rifle. So for the exotic bonuses, we have Slug Rifle. The weapon fires solar slugs that get stronger when aiming down sights. And then we have for the Empire, this weapon is full auto and does extra damage to Cabal and penetrates phalanx shields. So obviously having a scout rifle that does extra damage to Cabal in itself is really useful. This is also an energy weapon, so it's not a kinetic weapon. It'll be good for taking down any kind of elemental shields. The increased damage that it does to phalanx shields is really noticeable as well. It'll take them down in just 2 or 3 shots, whereas many other weapons would take much longer. And if there are engagements in the raid where you see a lot of these phalanx shields, then this could be really, really huge. On top of that though, it generally just does a lot of damage. Fires slower when you ADS, but you can see the increased damage. It's not an exotic that gets me super excited in itself, you know, if I was running around in patrol or I was doing strikes, anything without Cabal, it's kind of a touch of malice type thing. It has the potential to do really, really well at one specific thing, and if you pick it up, it's definitely worth having one ready for the raid. Now for this last slot, I actually wanted to talk briefly about a couple of weapons. So there is the Borealis sniper. This has a bonus called the Fundamentals, which allows you to change the weapon's damage type, cycling between solar, arc, and void energy. And it also has Ionic Return. Breaking an enemy shield transfers 1 bullet from reserves into the magazine. Now personally, I don't necessarily rate this sniper as being incredible in comparison to some kind of legendary snipers. You know, there'll be some really good legendary snipers in terms of DPS for the raid, but I'm actually going to use the Nightfall as the example here. Of course, Bungie are now kind of experimenting with elemental changes as you move through the Nightfall as an activity, and it's entirely possible that we could see this in the raid as well. If that's the case, then Borealis potentially could be a very, very good weapon depending on what types of enemies are present in the encounters, and for anything that you can critical hit, you know, over and over again that does have shields, it could be pretty good as well with the Ionic Return bonus. Of course, Borealis is PlayStation exclusive, but it's one to bear in mind. And the other exotic I wanted to point out is the Legend of Arius, which is the exotic shotgun that we're probably going to get during the raid. The quest for this has been found in the database, and it does pertain to the World Eater quest on Nessus, so it's probably one of, if not the raid exotic, which suggests that it could be pretty good in the raid itself. So it has Shock Blast. The weapon fires blasts of high energy arc damage that overpenetrate enemies. It also has accurized rounds. The weapon can fire long distances, increased range, and long march, detect enemies on your radar from further away. So it doesn't necessarily sound like it's going to be fantastic off the bat, but of course that depends what exactly is in the raid, and this could turn out to be a very, very powerful shotgun. Of course, for the first kind of time into the raid, this isn't something that we'll have, but after the first week of the raid, I'm assuming this thing will probably become accessible via the quest, and it's definitely one to try out, dependent, like I said, on what kind of encounters we see. Before I go, there's another honourable mention right here which is worth taking note of. There are some exotic Warlock boots which I don't actually have, called the Lunar Faction boots, and they have a bonus which allows the Rift to gain the additional ability to automatically reload allies' weapons. You can also do essentially the same thing with the Titan's Barricade, and these are absolutely worth noting, and they could be very effective in the raid in particular. A lot of what I've spoken about here can be kind of stacked together as well. You know, having a hunter use the Orpheus Rig to get an absolute ton of supers off, an empowering rift for bonus damage that also automatically reloads your weapons, and then even Titan Barricades doing the same thing as well. With weapons like Skyburner's Oath and Merciless in particular, you're going to be able to put out a ton of damage. So it's really worth thinking about how these different things can be combined and kind of familiarizing yourself with what the possibilities are for these different abilities, because, you know, come raid time, it's going to be really useful to kind of be able to look at what you have in your arsenal and across your different characters in the fire team to actually pair up a bunch of different things and kind of stack together, you know, exotic bonuses and character abilities to do some pretty powerful stuff. I really like this stuff so far in Destiny 2. It looks like they're creating a lot of opportunities for team play, which is really cool, and I'm also super happy that the Hunter Night Stalker is in the game. I feel like that's a huge savior for a lot of people for the Hunter in PvE stuff. So there we go, guys. I wanted to break down the most interesting and the exotics that have the most potential for the raid, and as well just generally what appear to be the most powerful exotics in the game right now. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. As always, if you have, a like and comment is appreciated below. If you have any thoughts on which exotics you think would kick ass in the raid, then definitely drop a comment below and let us know. Before I go, if you want to save 10% on Control Freaks, including the new Destiny 2 edition stuff, then you can follow the link in the description and use code Houndish and you'll save yourself a few bucks. But for now, I appreciate you guys watching as always, and I'll catch you very soon.